All right.
See here.
Brace yourself. I'm sure the servers are going to crash as so many people start piling in.
Hey everybody, thanks for joining. We're gonna give it 3 minutes here, like we always do before we hit go. Just pre-call chit chat. Yeah, man, it's sunny here in Michigan. I'm gonna take it. I'm gonna take it. It's what do we get? I don't know. Almost 60 degrees. It's kind of chilly, but the sun's
Man,
out. Haven't seen it in a while.
yeah. Yeah. What part of Michigan are you in?
I'm in Kalamazoo.
Cool.
Yeah,
Yeah,
lives.
I've been up into that area, but yeah, being here in Denver, it's sunny all the time.
Yeah,
So spoiled.
that's nice.
Yeah.
Hey everybody, we still have about I don't know, another minute here or so as we kick it off. But just as a reminder, if you have questions along the way, and I'll put a note here in the chat as well. Everyone, if you have questions, drop them in the chat, drop them in the Q&A. We'll answer them as real time as we possibly can. The other thing is, if you have topics or other things that you'd like us to cover in a future webinar, you can drop it in there as well. Um, just really like to stay on top of, all this crazy changing, shifting stuff is,
Yeah.
which I don't know, every time it seems like everything might get back to normal, something crazy happens. So here we are.
Yeah. Yeah. No kidding. Yeah, I echo that. And thanks, Aaron. I'll just say, yeah, to everybody, please throw questions in there. And then, Aaron and I have talked about just trying to make sure we're providing the best information for you guys as we can. Right? So we might not have it prepped for today, but then we can always get those answers for you guys for a later time.
We are gonna I launched I should go to this. Um this will end up I want to drop kind of we started a YouTube channel to
Cool.
I'll drop it in to capture um, as much of like some of the key ones that we cover, and we'll just drop it out there. I mean, doing 200 to 250 webinars a year, we can't. I haven't built out the infrastructure, but it will, and this one will end up at that YouTube channel where we're posting a lot. There's a lot of older stuff on there too. I really just started doing this at the beginning of the year just for those ones that are highly recommended, usually 2 to 3 days after we do one of these business days, we can get it posted out there, and we can just give you a direct link, or you can just subscribe to the page, and every time something new comes up, you can go see it. Yeah, awesome. Well, I mean, we're 3 minutes after the hour. There's a bunch of people on. I think it's a great time to get started. So let's go ahead and kick it off. Happy Thursday, everybody. My name's Aaron. I'm the co-founder and managing director here at BWG Connect. We're a giant networking, knowledge sharing group. I kicked this off 8 years ago as I was on the brand side looking for great conversations, whether they're in person or just one-on-one, or venues like this to ask as many questions I could from a resident expert. So a couple of things as we get started here. We're starting 2 to 3 minutes after the hour. We're going to wrap up with 2 to 3 minutes to go in the hour as well. We want it to be as educational, informational as possible. So we keep the chat open, the Q&A open, drop questions in there. Zach and I will get to those as quickly as we can, if we can get to all of them. If you have questions that we can't get to, we'll just mark it down as a follow-up. If you have ideas for something that we could, spin off and do another webinar like this, it's informational and educational, just let us know in the chat or the Q&A as well. And you can always email me, Aaron, Aaron at bwgconnect.com. I spend the majority of my time talking to brands and saying, hey, what are your biggest pain points? What are you trying to solve for? Like, what connections can I make? So I say that from the standpoint, would love to have a conversation with anybody on the line today. Just shoot me an email, Aaron, like I said, Aaron at bwgconnect.com. We don't sell anything. Just like to keep on top of those things, and more than happy to open my network up to you as well in those conversations. When I'm saying, hey, what are those biggest pain points that you're trying to solve for? I'm also asking everybody who's working for you and who's not. Who are those people you love? Who are the ones that are really outperforming everybody else? And when the same people pop up over and over again, those are the people we ask to kind of jump on the webinars and be a thought leader in the space. And so I don't think anybody will be surprised if I said, hey, tariffs come up every now and again, like maybe every single call, maybe 20 to 30 times a week. And so Zach over at Sigil has been a long time friend, partner, supporter of the network and a ton of brands in it. And he was like, "Yeah, I'll jump on and talk about a lot of things that are going on in the tariff space and how it's impacting brands and in different ways brands could be thinking about solving for it." Again, this is probably the first in a series of these we're going to do, and so we're not going to get to everything, but we're going to try to tackle these one-off manner. But Zach, I'll kick it over to you. If you want to do an intro, on yourself and Sigil for sure, and how you're helping brands there, and then we can kind of jump into the conversation. Sound good?
Yeah, for sure. Awesome. Thanks a lot, Aaron. And thanks, everybody. Welcome. Before jumping into that, I do just want to echo and give kind of a shout out to Aaron and all of his hard work that he does. Like what he said there in the intro is very genuine. He talks to like brands all the time and introduces people all the time and is very generous with his time. So if you guys haven't reached out to him, like definitely should. And that's part of what makes BWGs to kind of a cool and unique group is that, everyone's so well connected. So anyway, shout out. Good job, Aaron.
Thanks, Zach.
Yeah, so thanks for having me on. And yeah, I'll briefly let me introduce myself. I'll mention Sigil, but like this is not intended by any means to be sales related. So it'll come up. You can reach out to me afterwards if it's relevant for you, but this is focused on education. So my background is as an attorney. I was at a top 10 global firm out in Washington, D.C. A lot of folks know me through that as being a brand protection expert, which is true. I then went, in-house as a general counsel for a consumer product brand. And that's where I kind of deep dive into everything globally, internationally, domestically on kind of brand protection issues, but also on all of the issues related to the company. And something that doesn't typically come up, I don't, historically, I've never had to mention, is I've done a lot of work with Customs and Border Patrol and understanding international shipping and, gray markets and diversions and parallel imports, et cetera. And so this is an area that I've got a good basis on and quite a bit of. And I also just want to give a shout out to my friends over at KPMG who also took some time and shared some information with me to help me prepare for this too. So got a lot of information to kind of go over. And if there's anything I don't hit on that you guys are curious about, like just let us know, either I or Aaron or some of you and the people that we're connected with or KPMG can get us those answers that we need for you guys there. So let me kind of jump into, oh, look, there I am. Probably should have done this slide here for the intro. But yeah, this is, so you've got my background here as an attorney and a brand protection expert. In the space now, I'm the CEO of a company called Sigil, which many of you have heard of, and we auto remove hijackers or unwanted sellers from the marketplaces. And so that's our kind of niche and specialty. We've got some new technology around that. I'm not going to dwell on this. If this comes up, if you guys have an issue with this, reach out. I'm happy to talk about it. Obviously, resellers and hijackers are part of the theme of impacts of tariffs, et cetera. So we'll get to that a little bit later. But let's focus in on making this successful for you guys. So this is my goal for this. I'm going to set both a framework for what we're going to talk about. Overall goal is to turn this kind of tariff uncertainty time to your advantage as brands. So right now, I know a lot of people have been stretched very thin coming into this season. There's been layoffs, et cetera. People are very busy. And so getting hit with the uncertainty of tariffs and the complications of that field is pretty hard for brands. So I want to, kind of put a guideline, some framework around how all this brand should be thinking about dealing with this, kind of give you guys some places where you can maybe dig in and start, and then talk about the implications of brand protection there. So conceptually, the theme here, like the way to think about as a company approaching the tariff situation is in order to like turn this to your advantage, you just need to be incrementally better in managing the tariffs than your competitors, right? You're just trying to gain competitive market share. So I think of it like, the old joke about you don't have to outrun the bear, you just have to outrun your friend. That's what we're trying to accomplish here with dealing with tariffs. So there are several things. There's a whole like list of things to do, to mitigate tariff impacts. I have broken this out into kind of near term, midterm, and long term. I'm going to talk briefly about 10 different tactics in each of those different timelines for you to consider. And I do that because with all this uncertainty, and people don't know when tariffs will be implemented or come down, et cetera, like the thing to keep in mind is that there are things to do now, things to start to work on, and things that come later. And to just start at the beginning, pick one thing and get started working on it, right? You don't need to do everything. Just slow and steady incremental improvements, and that's how you will outpace competitors and turn this to your advantage. And then, like I said, in the end, we'll talk about how that has implications around brand protection.
Love it. Love it.
Thanks, man. So this one's a little complicated right off the bat. We're going to get complicated. I'm going to work from long-term into near-term because hopefully we'll remember the near-term stuff at the end of this call. So long-term tactics are things like pricing and dealing with country of origin. These are like major changes to your operation that either are like very expensive in time and money or just have like significant impact. I want to hit pricing right off the bat because a lot of brands have been asking, like, do I need to reprice? Do I need to change my products? Do I need to include tariff pricing in this? And that's not an easy answer. So I would break this out for you as brands. So think about, are you on like smaller entities who might not have resources to be patient and weather the storm as long? Or are you a larger entity who has the resource to, do some demand elasticity measurements, et cetera, around their products? Because repricing can have very big implications with, demand curves, et cetera. So generally speaking, repricing your products would be a long-term reaction. There's a lot of things in the short and midterm you can do to mitigate tariff impacts before changing product pricing for it. That said, many smaller brands who have got to find a solution fast are going to have to jump to the end of long-term planning, right? So it might make sense for you that you've got to reprice soon. The piece I'll add to that, or what's somewhat working in brands' favor right now, is that consumers are expecting price increases. Something like 82% of consumers understand this is coming and that it's due to the tariffs. So they're not necessarily blaming brands for doing those price increases. So it is an option if we need to go there. What I'll also
Do you
say,
think, really quick, do you think it's a strategic opportunity for brands who are been looking to put through a price increase to do it
yes.
now?
Yes. And actually, so what I've heard is that several firms are looking at that and they're using this as that opportunity. But they're also evaluating the tariff rates to it. So they're looking holistically at their countries of origin and getting a sense of what are their tariff rates going to be, and then picking a price increase that is sufficient to cover that tariff piece, but also to make up for lost ground from having not raised prices in a while.
Right.
What I will say on that too is what I'm hearing is the brands who are approaching that are not planning to drop prices later. So I flagged that because if you're planning to do a price increase and like throw, the tariff tax up on your checkout page so that consumers see why the price is increasing, well, then you should plan to lower that price once tariffs go away. But if you're planning to kind of regain some pricing share, then you would not want to publish that tariff price onto your page. So but to your point, Aaron, it's a strategic call. And the reason why I and others in the field would put this in a long-term bucket is because it takes planning. And like you should be very thoughtful about your competitive landscape and about your differentiation, your long-term strategy, et cetera. Other long-term strategies include product redesign in order to change your country of origin designation. And then as a last resort, be US manufacturing. And I call that out just because I get asked, should we be moving to US manufacturing? And for the vast majority of brands, it is simply not feasible to change their cost structures in that way. And for many of the brands, the larger entities who could invest in setting up US facilities for it, there's a lot of hesitation about doing so now, given the uncertainties of the market, et cetera, and on the precipice of economic challenges. So there are many, many things to do first before you feel like you need to explore a US manufacturing option. And so one step above that would be changing your country of origin. That's what COO stands for, country of origin designation. And to think about that briefly is country of origin is where your product undergoes a substantial transformation from, whatever pre-existing materials into the thing that it is. And so if you're, changing cotton into a t-shirt in India, then India is going to be your country of origin there for that. But for many brands who have subcomponents, and there's essential parts that make the thing that thing, say the internal speaker component that makes it from a box to a speaker. And maybe that gets installed in a different country of origin so that you can designate a lower tariff value.
Yeah, like in this slide in particular, because it is longer term and they're bigger ones, I kind of break it out in my head just because I know, in the group, right? There's everything from startup to, Fortune 1000 company.
Yeah.
For if you're the owner of the digital, or you're the CEO, or and then I guess a COO as well, you you can be playing around with 2 and 3. For digital executives who report up to an executive team, their focus primarily, they can make recommendations. Their focus, in my mind, the key takeaway is number one, and use this as a strategic opportunity. Yeah, I would not go in and take the straight up tariff and add that straight in. It is, hey, overall repricing strategy. Can we make up lost ground? Or maybe I don't have to give in as much and I can keep below my competition by not adding as much because I already had a buffer in there. Whatever way, take this as a strategic opportunity to reprice all your items. Now we know on the Amazon side, all the issues that pop up there, but not all business is done, on Amazon, but you can strategically address it. So repricing, I love even reframing the mindset as a whole, right? Like take this as an opportunity. Love it.
Yeah. That's a great point, Aaron. Yeah, this is definitely a time to gain ground against your competitors. So midterm tactics are things about shifting your supply chain around. And these, I'm not going to spend a lot of time here because this, again, to your point, Aaron, this is more for like the operations folks or the higher level business folks who are trying to change the overall like planning on it. But the point I want to flag here for brands just to be thinking through it is in terms of like nearshoring or finding different manufacturing locations, et cetera, like those are meaningful investments, but they can provide sustained savings over time. So the previous approach from the first Trump first Trump tariff exercise in 2018 was to move to the China plus one approach. And so that was setting up additional manufacturing sources in other places in Southeast Asia, right, like Vietnam or Cambodia. Unfortunately, those territories are also subject to pretty high tariffs right now, almost 50%. They're not implemented, but that's the threat. So that approach is a little bit dicey. Kind of the other recommendations that we've been hearing is nearshoring to Mexico and Canada or India as a good location for exploring additional manufacturing spots. I want to mention foreign trade zones briefly because this could be an interesting strategy in the right context for managing inventory or getting inventory onto shore, like pulling it up before tariffs hit. Like, so if you are manufacturing in, say, Cambodia, and you're expecting to have tariffs come down and get implemented suddenly, and you want to get your inventory out of there and into the United States as quickly as you can, one thing you can do then to avoid having to pay those tariffs and to hopefully, if you expect those tariffs to come down, to then dodge them altogether, is import them into the physical United States, but setting up a foreign trade zone, which is basically like a duty-free spot. So you bring it in, they can be held here in the US, they don't get charged their tariffs until after they exit the foreign trade zone to be sold in the US. And if you want to learn about setting that up, oh, great, we got a good call out here for a correction here. Thank you, Curtis, saying foreign trade zone sets the tariffs at the time of entry. Cool. Chris, you're going to be on the next call, adding some additional points to this. Thank you for the clarification. Using a bonded warehouse. Thank you for the tariffs at the time of exit. So there we go. But the point being, we can take a deeper look at this if this is something that you think you need to explore in order to figure out, be it a bonded warehouse or foreign trade zone, how to avoid that properly. And there are contractors available for, or consultants who can kind of help guide that. So I want to jump forward then into more of the near-term tactics and dealing with, oh, it says customers valuation adjustments. That's funny. That's a typo. I should say customs valuation adjustments. And these are like methods to try to deal with the tariff that you're actually paying for the goods that are coming in. Several of these also have implications for how we're going to recommend addressing brand protection issues. So that's why I'm going to start with kind of an explanation of these. So first is the concept of first sale for export. And this is essentially using a middleman to import products into the United States. And if you use a middleman for that, then you can have the US tariff value set based off of the original tariff value from the sale of the manufacturing point to the middleman, instead of from the middleman into the United States. So the benefit there is you can sometimes have a lot cheaper initial, customs valuations there. So that way you can lower your overall customs valuation when you bring it into the United States.
So
So
really,
there are,
really quick. So just so that I understand this,
yeah,
because this is counterintuitive to what I would say has been brand protection for the longest time, which is remove the remove the you know maybe it's not, but
remove the middleman.
remove as
Yep.
many resellers as possible. Be the single seller yourself. But is the idea here that you could potentially have a an authorized reseller that is in another country, maybe it's in the UK, that has
Right.
a different tariff negotiation with China, and then they are the reseller uh, within the US. Is that am I tracking here where you strategically insert somebody?
Yes. So that's exactly the double-edged sword here, right? So uh, like middlemen, bona fide middlemen like this is a practice for, there are certain benefits and advantages to using a reseller like this. For example, products might be subject to important like quality controls, management, et cetera. And so resellers might have specialties in handling that. Or those resellers might provide added like financing terms, that's a benefit. So the brand doesn't have to outlay cash for it, right? Those resellers can bring that in. They can sometimes handle things like smoothing out just in time, distribution, et cetera. So there's like certain advantages to working with some of those resellers. The downside is that those resellers are, an added actor. And if they start behaving beyond what you would like them to do, then that creates risk. But this is the other thing to keep in mind, though, here, man, is, in the competitive concept, many brands have resellers like this who are already importing into the United States or drop shipping into the United States using, this advantage of the first sale for export. And so it's one of those risks that if you don't, can at least evaluate mitigating it, if you do have that problem of, poor control internationally in your distribution chains and you're facing those middleman imports, then this could, be a place where you have heightened risk. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. I'm just
Yeah.
yeah, it's interesting. It is, or I mean, maybe you already have a distributor in the UK, in the EU, that is distributing over there that you can strategically use or leverage in the interim until things get worked out. I'm sure they would love the opportunity to add on, even if it's for, 6 months or 8 months, the additional volume that would flow through it. So,
Yeah, and I'll to that point, you got to be a little bit careful, or I just would hope caution for everybody in that, Customs and Border Patrol um, can be strict in kind of examining this question. Like it has to be a bona fide sort of middleman. And so if you're using an existing distributor relationship, it has the width of, potential like manipulation. So you'd have to be very clear in your documentation and like set up new contracts with them, and really define it out and say like, no, I understand that you guys have this distributor business, but I want you to be doing a different service wholly unrelated to that, to help me import over. You just have to be very careful with it. But it's something to consider.
awesome.
Other ways to kind of reduce your customs value are things like, basically looking at how customs value are specifically calculated and trying to manipulate those in your favor. So customs value tends to include, the full price that was paid for the products as you're importing them. And depending on what your contracts, what different branch contracts have, sometimes that includes, cost of things like insurance or mold design or, certain packaging, et cetera, is bundled into the per unit price that's being imported in. And so one way to reduce your, unit price for the product being imported is to unbundle those things and those services. And so you'd pay for those, insurance, et cetera, separately, and then that lowers your rate or lowers your overall price point, and that lowers your tariff. So that's a kind of a near-term tactic you can take. Reclassification of the HTS codes. HTS stands for the Harmonized Tariff Schedule, and that's basically the list that sets for what type of product you pay what type of tariff. Sometimes those get misclassified, and so that's one that you want to take a look at. It's an easy place to start and say, what am I classified as? What should I be classified as? And maybe there's a difference there that we can, improve our situation. And then something we've kind of been talking about all along a little bit with this, Aaron, is like talk to your suppliers and your distributors and try to renegotiate some terms, right? And it doesn't have to be gouging them for something, right? But it's more of a, hey, we're in this tariff situation. Everyone's got to eat. No one wants to have to go out of business. Let's find that flex, right? Let's share some costs on this. Let's, make sure we're being mindful about distribution and pricing, et cetera. But take that time to go in and, build those relationships, right? So kind of to your point earlier, Aaron, you said, like, hey, let's flip the script and use this as an opportunity to like strategically reprice or something and kind of move our strategy forward. This is a good time for that too, right? Like it's an excuse to get together with your suppliers and distributors and deepen those relationships to try to help, share through the burden.
Awesome. And just a quick reminder as we're at the halfway part through the hour here, drop any questions you have in the chat or the Q&A, and we'll answer those as we go. If you have them, they pop up. A lot of times the topics that get a little more in depth like this, we get sometimes fewer questions, but if you have them, don't hesitate to drop in there and we'll be sure to tackle them.
Yeah. Thanks, Aaron. All right. So you've already kind of hit on some of this for me. I appreciate that, man. But I wanted to flag, like, all right, in this changing landscape, where are some of the brand protection challenges that come out of this? So one that doesn't get talked about very often are third shifting risks. And third shifting, for those who don't know, is the idea that many factories will run a morning shift and an evening shift, right? So they run those two shifts in order to produce products. Well, unbeknownst to many brands, those factories will run a third shift overnight, and they'll use the molds and they'll generate additional branded product. It's not documented, and then they take that added product and they bring it out the back door, to the gray market or to sellers out there. And it's much more common than brands realize or than you'd think. And when you're in a situation like this, where a lot of factories, they had planned purchase orders, they built products. Now they're sitting on that product because they don't want to have to import it into the US due to tariffs. And they also have employees, and they're going to be, looking for ways for themselves to make money, et cetera. And new orders are not coming. It puts a lot of pressure on those factories to find a place to put that inventory. And so we are expecting basically that pressure only increases as the months go by, and for there to be third shifting risks and leaks out through the supply chain there.
We have a question that comes in. Is there any advantage to shipping to a trusted warehouse in, say, Canada and drop shipping from
Um, in order to like mitigate the third shift risk.
I think just as a whole, I think it's more along the lines of kind of what I was bringing up, which was, nobody wants to. The reality is everybody wants the tariff situation to just be resolved. In the meantime, is there anything you can do so that you're not subjected to as large a tariffs that are hitting, i.e., the end company that's importing is in, we'll say Canada, and they then become, so Canada, then that entity in Canada is selling in the US.
Yeah, so it's a good question. And honestly, it's like, Dan, your comments here in the chat are super well timed for this. And I kind of would echo them. Like, it's not there's not like a silver bullet, like easy answer here, like shift it from one place to the other. Like, it does have to be like, legitimate and bona fide and intentional, right? And to Dan's point, right, Customs and Border Patrol, like, they take their job seriously, like they're law enforcement, they're used to people trying to get around it and get away with it. And the downside there is when you've got the good acting legitimate brands like here trying to do the right thing, Customs and Border Patrol is like they're used to dealing with the bad actors, right? So like they suspect everybody. Um, so yeah, I think you'd have to be mindful and careful, right? And this kind of goes to the idea of um, that substantial transformation in order to where the product becomes, the product for kind of country of origin designation. And then, yeah, it's pretty complicated, like, and very kind of case by case. So it's hard to answer in a broad context here, but it's something to think about.
Yeah, right here. No benefit to drop ship from Canada to the US. The de minimis exemption goods under $800 was canceled at the beginning of May. Yeah, I mean, it also goes a little bit deeper, and yeah, I'm right there with you, Dan. Which, from the standpoint of, if you're going to add value or assembly, right, then maybe we could. But in this instance here, if you're just shipping to Canada to have it routed in the US, not the
Yeah,
greatest
yeah,
spot to go. I wouldn't
yeah,
gamble a business on it, I guess is what I'm saying.
yeah. Yeah, exactly, right. I mean, but it's good. It's like good questions, right? And this
Yeah.
is part of the benefit of events like this, right? Is hey, we're creating that space for brands who can try to ask that questions and hear from thoughtful folks at the network, right? Who can chime in on this. So
Yeah, I can't remember the last time we went through something like this. I mean, even from the standpoint of when the pandemic hit and there was, container pricing went to 35,000 a container or whatever, and there's a major disruption to supply chain, which I think we should get into out of stock and what could potentially happen there.
yeah, yeah,
And I think a lot of that goes into this third shifting risk, right? Is if it goes out of stock here and they've got a bunch over there, does it find its way into our market as a whole?
yeah,
But this is the forum to drop something in there. And yeah, a lot of times the answers aren't cut and dry. But there's some of them that are pretty strong indications about what you should or shouldn't do. And the other thing is more than happy to connect people afterwards for a conversation so they can work it out. This is a
yeah,
new enough experience for all of us that I think a lot of conversations are needed around it.
yeah, for sure. And and I would put that call out too to folks who are on this call who maybe are at larger organizations and are more well versed in this and have some resources. there are also folks on this call who are much smaller companies and have no experience and very little resources. And so helping each other out is part of the, part of what makes the BWG Connect network like so valuable. So hey, let me
Um,
jump
it,
forward. Oh,
yeah.
sorry, go ahead here.
No, it says Amazon, just somebody's dropped in here in the Q&A. Amazon has provided strict messaging that they're only accepting tariffs increases while tariffs remain in place. Therefore, any increase that they accept will be reversed if tariffs revert. So those increases will not stick unless tariffs do. What I've seen on this side is that is Amazon very often has very, very strict messaging. And then the actual what comes to fruition at the end then becomes another negotiation as a whole. So yeah.
Yeah,
Awesome.
and I would also note that some of the changes, the Amazon rule changes have come with as they've like shifted and tried to renegotiate over, vendor central, seller central relationships too. And so yeah, it kind of is going to be case by case too, of when the brand is going to get hit with some of those challenges.
Yeah, I
And
don't
maybe
doubt I don't doubt they will use it in negotiations later on. I think they love those, they love holding the cards. They love holding the cards.
for sure. So in terms of like this tariff era brand protection strategies, and I want to jump to this too, because I think the Amazon point that you made about out of stock is important, Aaron. I want to come to it. So I want to hit a few of these points briefly. Some of this I'm not going to spend a lot of time on. Like the way that I've been, recommending folks to think about brand protection right now is to think about cash and cash availability and how best to utilize that. Because inventory is essentially, just a holding place for cash. And it's a way to exchange cash to inventory back to cash and to try to improve that, that kind of cash basis. So focus on strategies that are going to help your cash situation. One is reducing your enforcement costs. And to be mindful of that, I don't think that means headcount. I think it's important that everyone's stretched thin as it is. I think we all need people in here and being mindful of this. So I think it's important to maintain your teams and take care of each other. But I think that there are places to save on money with vendor costs, or there's a lot of improvements in AI technology and automation technology. And so there might be places to reduce your costs there. And that becomes important because that's going to free up a little bit of cash in your departments for utilizing what I would recommend, which is buyback programs. So I've got some good history using buyback programs. Basically, when you run into an unauthorized seller or hijacker, they've got inventory. And that inventory can be pretty valuable to you, especially in things like avoiding stockouts and if you've got to, maintain your listings. So getting access to that inventory is worth it, especially on a fast timeline and a relatively good price, which you can then sell at a higher price in order to make up your margins and then gain some cash. And that recycles, right? You can keep doing that. And in particular, right, why this matters so much right now is because those Amazon stockouts or any of your online stockouts can be so damaging long term for the brand, right? Because you're going to lose so much ranking position there, and it's going to take 6, 8, 12 months of discounts and coupons and run an ad spend to try to make that back up once we get through this whole tariff situation. I think it's really important that brands do their best to avoid those stock out positions in terms of like outrunning the bear, so to speak.
Wow, that's an interesting, really quick, I want to make sure that I understand, because I think that's an interesting math equation that I'm not sure how many people are doing, which is because I wouldn't have thought about the buyback program, right? I
Yeah.
wouldn't have. But what you're saying is, if you go out of stock, if you're on page 7, not as big of a deal. If you're on page 1 or top 5 of search, if you can look at how much you're going to lose if you go out of stock, right? Where it's going to, take time, effort, and money to get back, a lot of it to get back into the top 5 or top 10. Like that's a math exercise around, okay, I know it's going to cost me, $40,000 like to get back up there, pay media and a single ASIN,
Mhm.
but I can buy the inventory for 30 and not lose it. Even if you lost 30 on the buying of the buyback of inventory, you lose 30, but you save 40 later on because you maintain your placing.
Well, I'll do you one better on that though, because if you manage a buyback program well, you can get that inventory back and then sell it and make profit off of that purchase, plus avoid that $40,000 cost of trying to rebuild your listing. And so, like, there's a target range where it makes sense to buy back a product profitably. And it's, usually based on, well, how much did that seller spend to get the product? And then how much leverage do we have over that seller? But so that's where things like, having a good system in place for, you know, to make a shameless plug for deleting a hijacker from your listing, right? So where you can effectively have kind of a stick alongside that carrot, or a competent legal counsel who can guide you through it, or et cetera, other powerful enforcement mechanisms. Then you can encourage that behavior. Now, doing a buyback program well has other, like, there's pros and cons and other pays to it, right? You're takes a little time. You've got to get the inventory. You've got to make sure it's good enough. Like, there's, you want to make sure that this person doesn't just go get more inventory and then sell that to you again, right? So there's ways to do it well. And I or other folks in the network are happy to talk brands through kind of the considerations there. But you can get that inventory out and make some cash there, plus avoid that expense while your competitors stock out. And that's a good place to take advantage out of a tariff situation.
Yeah, it's awesome. I hadn't even thought about the potential lost dollars to regain rank and position. It's not just lost sales, right? It's not like as soon as you come back in
Right.
stock, all of a sudden you're going to be right back to where you were. You're out of the mix. And if it's an extended period of time, if you're just talking Amazon, Amazon has looked at it and said, hey, you have no inventory. You've had no purchases and no detail page views, in 3 months. It's a
Yeah.
long way back. It's a long way
Yeah.
back. And it's usually a lot of money. And building that calculation in the overall opportunity cost of taking any action is, I don't know, it's awesome. Thanks.
Yeah,
It's one
for
of my
sure.
key takeaways from this. I love
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. Thanks, Aaron. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
And so another piece I want to know is liquidation. And a lot of brands strategically use liquidation, and there's good choices for it, right? And that's part of how you maintain cash flows. But sometimes you've got added inventory that didn't move and needs to be liquidated, or it's running near expiration dates, et cetera. And there are several good liquidation options domestically in the United States. But one thing I wanted to flag is that there are tariff relief options here. There's a strategy to have the tariff that you paid basically, paid back through what's called a duty drawback. And this is where if you've brought inventory into the United States, but then it's never actually sold into or becomes part of the United States market or economy, and eventually gets either destroyed or exported, then you can get up to 99% of that tariff payment back. So I would just flag, in order to take advantage of that opportunity, right? Brands who are liquidating and use liquidation as a strategy should explore, if they are not already, international liquidation markets so that they can get that drawback. And then they get that cash and they can use that cash for buyback, et cetera.
It's just crazy how complicated it's gotten, right? It's just,
Oh man, for sure, for sure. So this is kind of a high level, right, kind of the different things that I wanted to flag for folks today, right? Give you an overview on the on the impacts of tariffs. Now, there are a lot of other things that people can do related to tariffs too, so we're happy to answer those questions as they come up. Oh, looks like we got a question. if a domestic brand sells to a liquidator who sells outside the US, can you get tariffs back? Yes. Thank you, Ryan. Yes. If the liquidator is domestic and then the liquidator takes the products outside the United States. Oh, that's a good question. That's a good question. I don't know off the top of my head. I want to kind of get into the key thing is is whether or not those products become part of the United States market. So it's possible that you could still get the drawback there. But I would want to double check in case if the question of entering US economy is based off of payments made to that liquidator based in the United States. So I think we'd want to do a deeper dive into trying to answer that question to make sure. But you're thinking about it the right way.
Awesome. Other questions? I mean, people feel free to drop in the chat or the Q&A as we roll through it. Yeah, I think this is fantastic. Are there more slides or?
Oh, no, I mean, this basically what we've got here. Yeah, I mean, we can go deep into the weeds of, tariff negotiations. No, I'm just kidding. I want to make sure I'm focusing on broad enough materials, but also narrowly like takeaways so that people have something that they can draw out from this.
No, I love it. And I think from this, we can take some other key takeaways. Are there other topics around tariffs if people want to drop in the chat or the Q&A that even on a future webinar, they'd want us to do a deep dive? Because I think stuff like this question that Ryan's dropped in there, they can be answered, but we would just come back and do one, say in a month or so, where we take any of those questions and we just, kind of go back, but then do a little bit adjacent on some other deep dives or tariff stuff as we've seen it play out. So if people have topics they want us to cover, I mean, the other side too is, Zach and myself, we spend just a lot of our time just talking with brands and helping them out. Would love to have a conversation with anybody on the line today. Like, what are those biggest things you're trying to solve for? Are there connections we can make? How can we open up the network to you? As far as Zach and Sigil and what they're doing, they're helping a ton of brands out. I mean, I think that top one, reduce overhead enforcement cost, is key around what Zach and his team are doing. But I mean, I don't see other questions or topics dropping into the chat or the Q&A right now. Exactly, key takeaways as we get to the end here. I mean, we'll give everybody the gift of 10 minutes of time back and grab a cup of coffee before the next meeting. But like, your thoughts, key takeaways?
Yeah, for sure. I would say, guys, take one thing from this, like one thing that is trying to, that you think is going to have a near-term impact, and figure out what's the first thing you're going to do after this call to go explore implementing that, right? So if in terms of your near-term, adjustments, if you want to explore buybacks, or if you want to, change or like unbundle your inventory costs or something, whatever it is, pick that one thing and then like figure out what one next step are you going to go do to explore that. Because surviving uncertainty is about consistent steps aiming towards a long-term solution here. So just, find that first, take that first step and you're going to be ahead of your competition. Most brands have no idea what to do right now.
I mean, Matthew drops in a question here. I know you're wrapping up, so no need to answer, but I do want to answer. I'm curious what you guys are hearing about Chinese direct sellers liquidating. So this might be that third shift that you're talking, liquidating their inventory ASAP. They're abusing de minimis, right? That's kind of been wrapped up. We noted that earlier, and dripping inventory in from Mexico into the US. Any tips?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So
It's an interesting diversion program, right? Like through another hook.
yeah, I guess it would be the same sort of approach that I would say. So that's like a good time. That's a good time for a buyback. So like that product came in cheap. They paid not much for it. You can buy it from them for cheap, restabilize your prices, and that's inventory now that you can utilize. Right? So that's an approach.
It's amazing we're even chatting about that as a problem.
Yeah, yeah, totally. There's
Uh,
another question in here Karen put in about acquiring other businesses to expand inventory. And I think that's a really interesting question. I think that what's where my mind goes is, do those businesses have this inventory of the same product? Because in order to put, like, if you're aiming to avoid your Amazon stockouts, right, it's got to be the same product on that listing. But if you're, um, so I guess I'm trying to understand maybe which type of inventory you're seeking to expand for that brand. If that makes sense.
yeah. It does, and we can even connect you with Karen afterwards, so you can have a chat and just follow up what she's talking about.
Sure.
Yeah. But I do, we are right here. So Matt says, yeah, convoluted, sorry, basically price on Amazon, Amazon are disgustingly cheap right
Oh,
now from
so
Chinese
you can't
direct
do the
sellers.
buyback.
Yeah. We're a vendor, so buyback doesn't work, sadly. But I do want to make sure I give people the, some time back today. But again, everybody, I'd encourage you to have a follow-up conversation with Zach over at Sigil and what they're doing on the brand protection side. I know he'd be more than happy to, chat about any of this stuff or any of the strategies on more of a one-on-one basis as we try to handle these. Like I was saying, we've got, startup to Fortune 1000 on the line. It's like, it's hard to do an all-encompassing deep dive on everyone with a specific answer, but Zach, I'm sure, is more than happy to jump on a call. From my side, I am as well. Just network, knowledge share, get ideas for the next webinars. If you're at a dinner, if you're in New York City, we're doing a full day event around Amazon advertising the second week of June. Let us know. We can send you an invite. But with that, I think, Zach, I think we're going to wrap it up. This has been a blast, and we can reconnect and do another one of these maybe in a month or so and do a deeper dive on maybe some rabbit holes and go down some more. Does that sound good?
Sounds awesome. Thanks,
Awesome.
Aaron. Thanks, everyone.
All right. Thanks so much, Zach. Thanks, everybody, for the great questions, the great interactions. We're going to wrap up this webinar here. Everybody take care, stay safe. Look forward to having you at a future event. Thanks, everybody. We'll see you. Bye-bye.